Welcome back to Resin-ating through Art. So have you ever wanted to make your own custom dice but were maybe a little intimidated? I'm here to show you the basics of how to do a single color die, so let's get started. One of the first things that's really important when casting dice is to have a solid mold. This one is from Druid Dice and it's called a smush mold. Kind of a fun name really, but the idea is basically it's a cap mold, thick cap that will go over the top and you'll be smushing the resin out to make sure you have no bubbles. So you'll mix up your resin and color it any way you want. It could be mica powder or through using some alcohol ink or other dye. Fill your mold slowly, letting the air escape. You're gonna leave it open for a little bit anyway, so you'll have some time for the air to get out. But you want to overfill each of your actual holes to provide a little bit of extra resin. This is going to be really important because you don't want to allow any voids to remain in the mold. I'm just going back over and making sure that I've got a nice surrounding rim of resin. Next, I'm going to take the cap and smear some resin over all of the numbers, being very careful to make sure that I work it into all of the actual numbers. Most of the time it's a 1 or a 10 that's on top. This is really important because it'll make sure that there's no air pockets left over when you cap the mold. After allowing it to sit for the air to rise to the surface, spray it with some alcohol. This will pop any of the surface bubbles before you cap. Do the same for your cap. Then line up your little cues and smush it. One of the little secrets that I found is usually it's your D10s that run into issues with voids. So I usually have those at my receiving end, the far end. Note how there's not much of a gap. That's how you actually want it. The weight of the mold actually holds it on nice and tight. You don't want any real space. Now, I recommend putting dice molds into a pressure pot. This will drastically decrease your bubble problem. You can do it on the desktop, but if you want flawless almost every time, pressure pot. Cure overnight, and this is what you got. You gotta crack it open. It'll be stuck pretty tight. Here I'm cracking the flashing, and you can see some of that on the lid. You're going to peel all that flashing from in between each of the dice. If you've smushed your mold really well, this is going to be very thin, almost non-existent. That's the goal. Gently pop the dice away from the numbers that are in your mold. You want to be real careful here because you don't want to tear it. Although if you're getting your molds from like a place like Druid Dice, they hold up really well. I've been very, very impressed with their molds. There are a number of other good companies out there, so the better the mold, the better the dice. I have used the cheap mold from Amazon, and I have to say that I'm very glad that I upgraded to the Druid Dice ones. I've been getting much more solid results. So now, once they're all free, don't forget to clean up your mold. You want to pull all the debris off of it and such. We're not going to worry about that part though. On to trimming the rest of the flashing. So with an X-Acto knife, you're going to want to go along the top edges of each of your dice. So this would be where the mold pieces met, or the cap met the body. Run the blade carefully along the edges to just remove the excess flashing. Don't have to worry about too much because there's another step to this. Just get them all trimmed up. Now you'll notice that the top, that one, isn't quite the same as the other sides. They're a little bit shinier, a little more polished because, well, there's just something that happens, a little bit of kind of roughening that happens on the top of the mold due to the heat of curing. This isn't hard to fix. Zona papers are what you want to finish up. You want to use the 8,000 grit, the 10,600 grit, and the 22,000 grit. So pink, aqua, and white in that order. I like to cheat using a cute little pottery wheel. Tape my paper on there, starting with the lowest grit, and just press it on there. This is wet sanding, so I have added a little bit of water. Tip it so that each of the edges where your rough sides are just get dulled a little bit. So here I am adding the water. I forgot to show that in the first step. But here's the middle paper. What the water does is adds a little bit of lubrication to smooth the sanding out. And it also does a good job of controlling the dust. When you are sanding, make sure you are wearing your mask just to make sure you're not inhaling the dust. But again, you're just going to go very carefully, push it flat against, and just let it do the job. You can do this without a pottery wheel, it just takes longer. Druid Dice mentions doing about 50 back and forth revolutions if you're doing it by hand. You can do it a lot faster by using the pottery wheel. So here's the final grit. This is our really, really, really fine grit. Just giving it a nice final polish. Go through all of your dice, all of the top sides, or anywhere that needs it. So, pottery wheel, the 3 highest grades of the Zona papers, and our sides match now. Much prettier. But those numbers are awfully hard to see. So now it's time to ink the numbers, or paint them, I suppose is a better way of putting it. You're going to want a alcohol wipe, acrylic paint, and paintbrush. Now, you don't have to be a great artist to do this. Honestly, inking's messy, but here's a nice, fast, efficient way to do it. So you're going to take your acrylic paint, the flat paintbrush, go ahead and just glop it in there. You don't have to be neat. Go ahead, go over the edges, it's fine. Because if you take it up against your alcohol wipe, flat against the table, the only thing that stays is what's inside the groove. So what's inside the indentation of your number. Go ahead and do this on all sides. And you can use metallics, you can use regular color. Doesn't matter what color you use as long as it shows up nicely against your dice. You want to contrast it. So you wouldn't want to use white on a really light color. You wouldn't want to use black on a really dark one. And don't worry if you leave just a little bit of paint on there. Go ahead, and once you have all the numbers, set it aside and let it dry. And just do that until you have all of your dice numbered. So, these are dry now. And I've got some leftover paint. No problem. Take another wipe and clean them up. Any excess paint that is on the outsides of those indentations will be removed by this process. This is why I said you don't have to be ultra neat. You can just glop it on there and clean it up. Repeat till the whole set of dice is done. And then you have some nice lovelies. So this is my, I will call them emerald set. I always pour a dice cup with mine. You don't have to. I just prefer to. I think it's a nice offering. But don't these look cool with the bronze numbering? This will be the envy of your party if you've got a set that's all your own. Almost a glass-like finish. And just ready to make the best rolls. At least, you know, we hope the best rolls. You want good crits, not, you know, crit fails. I've had my share of those. So now you know the basics of how to do a single pour dice set. Next time we'll do something more complicated. Happy casting!